everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. We have an exciting day today. We have Derek with us today. Derek is from Wisconsin. And what's going to be unique about him is I was reading his bio and going through everything, and we were chatting ahead of time. And I'm like, this guy's me, or probably smarter and better looking than me, but definitely somebody who's been in the industry for a long time. I started in 2002. You started in 2003. So it's always fun to have a chat with somebody who's been through some market cycles and been through some changes and kind of has that experience and frame of reference. So, man, welcome to the show. I really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about you for everybody who's listening and doesn't know you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Dave. I always enjoy getting on these shows and sharing some of my knowledge that came from making a ton of mistakes in the last 20 years. So my pain is somebody else's gain, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, you hit it on the head. I've lived in Wisconsin my whole life, but we started off, like most people, just buying a couple fixer-upper rental properties. Over the first few years, built up a fairly decent sized portfolio, and then got swept up in the crash of 2007. And that was, um, eye-opening / earth-shattering experience.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we had two options: either tuck our tails and give up, or figure out a different way. And that's what we did. So happy to dive into any details. I'm an open book. So
Yeah. Well, what made you decide to get involved in real estate? Right. There's a million things you could be doing as a young man. Like why real estate?
yeah, I was into construction trades right out of high school. And so it was natural for me to work with my hands. I actually bought my first property for myself in house when I was 21 years old, fixed that up. And so I had 20 acres of land and a small ranch house in my very early 20s, long before I really realized I wanted to be a real estate investor. But fast forward a few years after that, I actually got into the financial services industry.
Oh, really?
And was advising most of the time married couples on anything from stocks and investments to mortgages and life insurance. And that's when I really started to learn how money worked, right? ROI, all the things that they didn't teach me in my local school, and don't teach many people. But those same people that I was sitting down with, they didn't really want to take any action. And I said, why am I spending all my time trying to help people that don't want to be helped? And now I've got the knowledge, and I just kind of reverted back to real estate because I knew I could use my construction skills and my hands to do my own renovations, which is really great until you want to scale.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you're used to doing everything yourself and you think you're saving money, you may be saving money on that one project, but ultimately you can't scale because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Exactly. So you bought the first, you're very similar to me. The first house I bought, I moved into it, fixed it up, sold it 2 years later, made a nice profit. Didn't even realize that was a thing that I could, live in it and take the gain, tax free. But when you kind of ventured outside of that and started doing properties, as in true investment properties, like how did you fund them? Were you still using bank financing, or had you figured out private money? What was your strategy?
Yeah, that was the hard thing because I didn't know anything else. My number one mistake, David, I never built a network in my early years.
Yeah.
The internet was just starting to ramp up. I went to seminars and trainings, but I never really stayed in touch with anybody. So when the markets did go down and I went down with them, we didn't have anyone to turn to that we had pre-established relationships with. So huge mistake. We've very much corrected that moving forward. But I used banks for everything. I was, the equivalent of lending tree, right? Everybody was fighting for my business. I had great credit, good income. And that's when, we realized we had no control over our business, was when the banking industry turned over and there was literally nothing we could do. We were put into default on 8 properties that were in the state of Florida. We had cash flow properties in Wisconsin. We were building and buying properties in Florida for, supposedly break even and appreciation. which to this day, I will never buy a property based on appreciation only
Yeah.
because of that hard lesson I learned. And the other thing I will never do is take out a home equity line of credit and put it into an investment property, as so many people are on Bigger Pockets and elsewhere bragging about so easy to just take out a HELOC and dive into an investment property
Yeah.
until your family is escorted out and you become homeless.
Yeah, I think, those of us that went through, oh, not 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, we learned some lessons. And, for me, I only lost one property. I was down to just one at the time. And, left town, moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. But I saw so many investors who were over leveraged and, just got absolutely destroyed. It was so, the last couple of years where people were like, you have this huge portfolio, why don't you refinance it at 3%? I was like, well, I got 8 years left. I'd rather just pay it off and carry on with my life so I can get them paid off. So yeah, I think I agree with you and can sympathize with that. I had some PTSD from those days too. I mean, we made a lot of money, but we just tend to be a little more conservative, I think.
100%. And to this day, I guess moving forward after that, I took on some partners and did joint ventures, and I started learning how to do alternative creative structures to
Mhm.
buy and control property, which is now a passion of mine. And I also learned how to actually talk to people and properly negotiate with people in a non-scummy way that manipulates them.
Yeah.
And that took years, and I spent a lot of time studying every one of my social interactions, my negotiations, whether it was with property owners or bankers or attorneys. I mean, you name it, I was dealing with anybody and everybody, especially in that '07 to 2010 time frame, because it took that many years for
Yeah.
all that stuff to wash away. And so as I got through that, a little over 10 years ago, I took on a business partner, and he had never used a bank for any real estate investment ever. He always used private capital.
Yeah.
And so when we partnered up, he kind of opened my eyes to, raising money, and we got to a point where we had more money available than we had deals in our own pipeline. So we started an arbitrage small boutique lending company, and that grew and grew and grew. And he bought me out first of the year,
Oh, really?
just,
Nice.
just because we, amicably have different visions for where we want to go.
Yeah.
But I mean, the last few years, we were averaging 175 loans on the books at any time. We're
Wow.
doing 20 to 25 loans a month, and around 30 million a year in originations, which honestly grew from just great relationships. We did very little marketing over the years. We lent regionally within our state,
Mhm.
and it was a good, very good business.
Yeah.
So power of networking again kind of came up into play.
Yeah, networking for the win. So when we went into 9, 10, 11, and your main business was rehabbing, I guess, and flipping, right? Selling to end buyers. What did you transition into? Because the problem I had was I was a rehabber in Central Florida, and then, the market just crashed. I mean, I've talked about it a million times. I'm sure you've experienced it. Like the rehabbing business died for really, I think, 3 or 4 years, right? Because the only thing banks were doing was they were taking properties back, not lending on new ones to like residential people. So, like, how did your business change, and what did you pivot to?
Well, our pivot was we got out of state investing, and we stayed in our backyard.
Yeah.
And the Midwest traditionally doesn't have the real large ups and downs.
Right.
So from '07 through 2011, 2012, the Midwest was still fairly easy to buy, renovate, and sell a
Mm,
house,
okay.
with the exception of waterfront property, your second homes. We have
Luxury
a
stuff.
good, yeah, we have a fair amount of that. But if you were in the median price points, you
Yeah.
could still get decent deals because we were able to buy the foreclosures at
Mhm.
deep discounts. I was buying HUD houses back then. The company that was contracted to liquidate the HUD houses in the Midwest by hand, I did my own spreadsheet, but not using Excel. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so old school. I use a legal pad and a pen,
Yeah.
but I figured it out um, based on how many days they were advertising that property on their website. I knew what percentage below asking they would accept,
Really?
and so I was buying HUD houses. I don't want to say left and right, but pretty often, right?
Yeah.
And I also discovered that at that time they would not count any below grade bedrooms
Yeah.
as bedrooms on their website.
Hmm.
So I was able to buy a couple houses that were 4-bedroom houses,
Hmm.
only advertised as 2-bedroom houses on their website. And when they were only 2-bedroom houses, they had far less people looking for them
Sure.
or looking at them. So we bought at big enough discounts where we could still renovate them and sell just a little bit below retail and move them, and did that for the years we had to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great strategy. I would assume that you would agree. Like every investor that I talked to or that was in my town, and we sit around now and have a beer. The common complaint is, oh, I wish we'd have bought more properties. I wish, God, they were so cheap back then. You could walk down the street and throw a rock and pick up a house. And when people ask that, like, why didn't you buy them? Well, we didn't know it was going to quadruple in value in the next 10 years, right? Like, who knew? Like, it was literally felt like the end of the world back then, and we were just happy to be getting any cash flow we got, or whatever we could do. We were happy to be getting it. But yeah, if I had a time machine, I'd go back and buy 300 more and hold every one of them somehow.
Well, that's my biggest regret is we didn't hold nearly as much as we wanted to because we were still in the rebuilding phase,
Right.
rebuilding our credit. And
Hmm.
so, and using private money is great, but oftentimes that private money is short term only. So
Right.
holding long term can be an issue. But
Yeah.
I would argue, David, that if you could buy properties that would pay for themselves and not negative cash flow, then you should be buying up everything right now that you can get your hands
100%.
on, because
Yeah.
20 years from now you're going to look back and say the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
hindsight is, but the key is it's got to cover itself. I can't see buying in markets where you're coming out of pocket every month to carry, hoping the property goes up in value. That I think would be very detrimental.
Right. Oh no, I'm 100% with you. For me, even back then, like I didn't even care about equity, right? I bought owner finance deals where I was buying at 15% above the tax assessed value, or sub twos that technically had no equity. But if I was making 300 or 400 bucks a month, like it was all about cash flow for me. With my early education and the coaches, like I learned that it's about cash flow. It's equity is a phantom number that will always fluctuate. But yeah, if I can get enough cash flow, fantastic. That's the plan I'm on. And yeah, just as you said, the housing price chart, from the HUD, it just goes nothing but up to the right. So yeah, 100% buying today is going to be good in 5 and 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, whatever it is. I get people that will always comment on like my reels or something like, yeah, if I'd have bought houses in 2016, I'd be rich too. I'm like, dude, like we didn't know in 2016 that they were going to double in value. Like nobody knew that. Like we were just buying, based on the cash flow that we could pick up, and that's what we were trying to do is build cash flow.
Yeah, but were you like me, David, where for the last literally 5 years we've been waiting for the market to shift, and it didn't shift and it didn't shift, it just kept
I
going
thought,
up?
I thought COVID was it. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's finally here. My prayers have been answered. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I'm like, oh, it's going to be shopping season again.
Oh,
And
it's
then
Christmas.
it stayed for like 5 weeks and then shot. I still don't understand why it shot up during COVID. And then there's been a couple other times where I'm like, oh, we're gonna crash, and I'm gonna go buy 200 more doors because I'm pissed and I'm really buying this time, right? I've learned my lessons, and no, it just doesn't happen, and I don't foresee any of that coming. I don't know about you. I think we're just gonna keep growing.
Well, I think it's Christmas time
Mhm.
in one aspect, and that's the creative structuring, because
Yeah.
now people, I would say over 50% of our leads, people are open to talking about creative alternatives.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was a challenge 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're buying properties. And by the way, I don't mind paying full retail where most of my quote unquote competition, they only have one tool in their toolbox.
Right.
It's a big damn hammer and it's cash. Well, that doesn't work for a good majority of our leads. And I'm also broad where I don't care if it's residential or commercial or industrial. We've got outlets for all of them, so I'm open to that too.
Mm.
But it just comes with you and I have been around the block for 20 plus years, and we've seen the cycles, and it's a little bit easier reading the playbook when you've seen the playbook.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've been at the worst time ever, which I don't think we'll ever repeat, what happened in the late 2000s, I think that was just hopefully once in a century thing where just it kind of all came together and just exploded all at one time. It's funny. I was talking to somebody earlier, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, I was at these RIAs, and all they talked about was how to buy pre-foreclosures in like '05, '06, and '07. It was the hottest thing ever. Didn't dawn on anybody to go, oh, what's the bank going to do with all these foreclosures
Yeah.
when they take them back? And my last rehab, I found out exactly what they did. They flooded the market to try to clear their books. So, yeah, I don't see any wave of foreclosures coming. I don't see any wave of short sales coming. I mean, is there going to be some? Of course, but we're so there's such a deficiency of housing units in the country that it's just going to get absorbed right into the market and not even cause a blip.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that once in our lifetime, at least, event doesn't happen. But I say publicly all the time, it was the biggest blessing that I ever had,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't likely be in the position I'm in today
Mhm.
had I not had that devastating turn of events,
Yeah.
right? I might have been just an arrogant asshole that
Mhm.
thought everything I touched turned to gold.
Yes.
And that's a problem, right? Like I've seen that with wholesalers now. The last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, they've been able to just get ungodly wholesale fees, taking advantage of newbies,
Mhm.
inexperience, right? And
Yeah.
now many of them are suffering. Well,
Mhm.
there is always a thinning of the herd in a market shift.
It's funny. I used to say that when we were at the top of the market, and because I used to teach disposition. So the thing I would talk to these wholesalers about is, I'm like, hey guys, this is not going to last forever, and all these rehabbers that you're over, though, when the market shifts, they're going to remember. They are going to remember that you stuck it to them for 50 grand. And I'm not saying it's bad to make 50, but you guys that were doing your highest and best and running the numbers up, just kind of ramming it down their throat like that. Those days are going to come back. Karma's a thing. Just make your assignment fee and move on. We don't need to squeeze every possible penny out of some of these deals. Um, so cool. So it's the mid 2000s. You got a partner now. You're doing some creative stuff. What was kind of the next evolution for you?
So for us, we discovered this little thing called masterminds
Yeah,
that we started one of our own, and
yeah,
then we also joined another one. And at that point, I started getting my ass handed to me in a different way. Right now, it was my peers pointing out a lot of the flaws that I thought were attributes.
yeah.
And a lot of it was figuring out a vision for what we wanted for our personal lives, and then building a business that served our personal vision, instead of what most people do is
Yeah,
go balls to the walls, work 7 days a week,
yeah,
pretending like someday they'll be able to enjoy the fruits of their labor, and someday may never come. Um, so it was an ass kicking that was good.
yeah.
The mastermind that we started was all friends
Hmm.
that decided to get together every 6 months from around the country. And I had never planned on actually having an established mastermind, which now we do, because we had so many people asking us, how do we get invited? How do we get involved? And the answer always was, well, you can't, and you're not invited because there's no room.
Yeah,
So, if you build it, they will come scenario. We had enough people ask us, would you start another group? We'd like to be a part of it. And then we started another one and another one. And so it's called the REI Circle of Trust.
love it.
For us, it's been really good because we've been a part of our local community and our RIAs for a long, long, long time. But that's kind of mind numbing, it's the same every month, right?
Yeah.
There's you don't get intellectually challenged,
Right.
and you also get to a point where you're kind of the top of the food chain in your local market. Well, you need somebody to reach up and reach out to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
getting to be a part of the correct mastermind for what you're looking for, because there is a lot of different
Sure.
types, and mastermind is used as a buzzword. So it could just be a seminar.
Mhm.
My definition of mastermind means everybody's collaborating
Yeah.
versus one person on stage and everybody else listening. To me, that's a seminar. So yeah, then we started the Generations of Wealth movement, which is our podcast, and the Generations of Wealth is kind of the parent umbrella over all of our other things that we have going on. We put on a conference on a cruise ship once a year called the Generations of Wealth Voyage.
Yeah. How's that for trying to organize and do logistics on that?
It's better now that we're back on a cruise ship. For a
Yeah.
couple of years, we couldn't, and organizing the same thing on land is a show.
Yeah.
And the number one reason is we bring in, this is a non-selling event, so our speakers aren't allowed to pitch from stage.
Right.
And we have some of the best speakers from around the country on all different advanced strategies, type of real estate discussions. But when you try and host something on land, the speakers can fly in or drive in for a day or two and leave.
Yeah.
Well, the whole point of this is it's also very heavy on networking. So
Mhm.
when you're on a cruise ship, you've
So
got 10 speakers,
yeah.
all the attendees, and we're all able to interact for the entire cruise. Nobody can escape. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So logistically, is this year we finally got back on the cruise ship. It was awesome.
Yeah. Wow. How long of a cruise is it?
We did an 8-day cruise to Aruba this year. Our next voyage is February of 2025, booking right now, and it's a 7-night, 8-day cruise, Southern Caribbean cruise, going down to St. Martin and a few other stops.
Wow. That sounds fantastic.
And what we do is we have conference for 4 hours the days that we're at sea
Yeah.
only. The days we're in port, there is no conference.
Right.
We have these town hall sessions in the evenings after dinner, which are more interactive. And then, heavy on the networking. People are hanging out, getting to know each other, helping
Yeah.
each other.
Forming
So,
partnerships, just doing some stuff.
yep.
Derek, I think you're absolutely right, because I went through all the things that all the things that you're describing. Yeah, almost identical happened to me. We were here in Chattanooga, out of desperation, we started wholesaling. And then I'm like, well, there's no RIA here. We'll start one, because there was a huge one in Orlando. So I'm like, well, let's kind of recreate that. And then you become the biggest investor or wholesaler in your town, and you think, oh, I'm something. I'm something. And I had a partner at the time, which ended horribly. But one of the good things he did for me was he got me out going around the country to some of these seminars, and then or web, there are more seminars and boot camps, but and speaking on some stages and meeting other people and going, oh, like what I'm doing is cool, but it's not special. you know, I remember somebody telling me, oh, there are hundreds of wholesalers that are doing $1 million a year. I'm like, absolutely not. You're out of your mind. Then I started meeting. I'm like, oh my God, these people are on every corner out there. Like, what have I been doing with my life for all of these years? I would, I used to come home from these events in masterminds, like so mad. Like I'd come back in the office just fired up. Like I just came from Fort Lauderdale. There are these two 15-year-old kids that are doing $2 million a year. What are we doing? What are we doing here? This is a train wreck. Like we got to get our act together. Of course, they're probably like 23, but they look 14 to me. And so, masterminds absolutely 100% like changed my life and the trajectory of all of our businesses, just by getting out there and like you said, being around people who are doing the business, and, can help you navigate some of the pitfalls, right? Because everything that's a problem for you, somebody in that room has figured out already. You just got to literally ask people, hey,
Well,
what's the best thing? What's the best payroll service to use? Whatever. Somebody's got it figured out.
and to build on that, every time that you think you're the only one that went through some
Yeah.
hardship, the
Right.
majority of us have been through some sort of hardship and are willing to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are approachable, and if you ask us, we'll help.
Yeah.
I'll help anybody. And that's the whole point of the Generations of Wealth movement too, is to, you know, to spread that message, because other people helped me. And I've had mentors and friends that just would have done anything had I asked. But
And asking, I think, is the hard part. I know for me, I'm incredibly shy and introverted. Like I get, you don't sound like, I don't sound like I'm shy, but like this is conditioning, right? To be able to do this. But when I first started, I was the guy that was in the back of the room in the farthest back left hand corner, taking notes, afraid to talk to anybody. And so now I realize, being the guy on stage, that that's a thing. So I make a point to try to like be as accessible and approachable and talk to as many people, because yeah, I mean, people are scared and they're nervous. But being at these events is, it's invaluable for you.
yeah, and we all have that same set of anxieties and fears at
Mhm.
some point in our lives,
Yeah,
and honestly our weeks and days, right? Because it doesn't go away. It just morphs and changes depending on what you're in. But
yeah,
I had the same thing. I didn't want to start a podcast for a long time
yeah,
because I didn't want to, there's a lot of work that goes into podcasting for sure.
yeah.
Um, but there was also just this, well, would I get a following? Would people really want to listen? And we all have these head games, right?
Yeah, dude, I'm mystified that people follow me. Like, 200,000,
As am I. I
two hundred
mean,
thousand followers on Instagram. I'm like, what do these people want to follow me for? I'm just a nitwit from Chattanooga. I'm like, like,
well,
what are
I'm
they
a red,
listening?
I'm just a redneck from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we get a couple listeners on this show, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, and so I used to be nervous like that too. Same thing. I still get a little nervous being on stage, but I just had to come to terms with, yeah, you've done a lot of stuff, which sometimes is shocking, right? Because at least me, low self esteem. Like, you don't think, you underestimate like what your own value and experience is. And I'll be talking to somebody, I'm like, oh, wow, like I do know things. I do know some stuff. I've done some different things, but yeah, with the podcasts and reels and being on stage, it's if there's one person in this audience or one person listening who can take something from what we're saying and it helps them, awesome, man. Then I've done my job, right? Like if I can inspire somebody to not quit. I mean, God, you lost 8 houses and came back stronger than ever and built this massive business. And, same thing for me. Like I, had a foreclosure, left Florida, came to Chattanooga. I tell people, with $5,000, we didn't even have enough money to be considered broke. Like we were half of broke, but we became multimillionaires all because of real estate, just, from following the steps and doing the things.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I try and encourage people, just like you said, if I get one listener that I could tweak something in their life,
Yeah.
it's worth it. And again, we had people do that for us.
Yeah.
And there is a mutual appreciation when you've gone through stuff and other people help you and you're then able to reciprocate.
Yeah.
On the flip side, there's also plenty of con artists out there that are just trying to, take advantage and scam people. And you got to be a little bit of buyer beware of who you're getting information from nowadays. YouTube University is rampant with false information.
Yeah. Or yeah, stuff that's outdated or people that haven't actually done the business in so many years. And one thing I say about real estate is the great thing about real estate is a very low barrier of entry. Really, anybody can get into it. The bad thing about real estate, very low barrier of entry. And the dishonest people can come in and just really, really screw people over. So, but no, I mean it's very evident that you care and are passionate about teaching and helping people. And so I love that you're doing so is it two masterminds now in the cruise? Is that kind
Well,
of?
we host three mastermind groups
Oh,
that we host ourselves
yeah.
under the Circle of Trust. I belong to another organization that I've been a part of for 6 years,
Mm.
and I just joined an Inner Circle mastermind. There's a gentleman by the name of Kyle Wilson. He was Jim Rohn's business partner. He was the man behind Jim Rohn International.
Oh, really?
And so Kyle had invited me to be a part of a couple book projects that I was a co-author in,
Mhm.
and both of them hit #1 Amazon and international bestsellers.
Nice.
And so joining part of Kyle's inner circle, and he's got a lot of people and influence, personal friends with people like Brian Tracy and Seth Mosley, and a lot of people that are outside of the real estate space too. And that's kind of the goal for me now is expand my reach on the national level outside of just real estate, because
Yeah.
the generations of wealth is not just about real estate investing. It's about time wealth and physical wealth and, spiritual wealth. So that's a big thing. And actually, towards the end of the show or whenever you want, I'd love to be able to give your audience a free ebook
Yeah,
from.
go ahead and give them the URL, and we'll post it in the show notes and underneath the video for sure.
Yeah, all you have to do is go to thegenerationsofwealth.com/join, and you will sign in there and get a free ebook sent to you.
Mhm. Nice.
And then obviously love to have you follow my show and
Mhm.
see what we're all about too.
Yeah, and are you doing coaching too, or just the masterminds?
Just the masterminds. I do a very limited amount of mentoring,
Yeah.
specifically when it comes to negotiating and creative deal structuring.
Mhm.
But it's case by case. I
Yeah.
do a lot of it is joint ventures with other wholesalers, investors that don't know how to do creative deal structuring. So
Mhm.
we might just partner up on their leads.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I've got a pretty full plate, and
Yeah.
I do love the one-on-one coaching, but I just haven't quite gotten my head around doing group coaching yet. It's
I've done them both. Yeah, I mean, they're both a challenge. They both got their set of obstacles to overcome. Years ago, I was coaching, wholesaling, and running the transactions business in its infancy, and it was just too much. Like I was literally juggling three bowling balls at one time, and trying to keep those because they're all three real businesses. And
Mhm.
first thing I shut down the coaching, and I had one guy who like begged me, my one-on-one guy, please don't. I want to keep going. So I'll do a couple of one-on-one people, but that's really it anymore. I just really don't have the time. Like you, I know you're traveling right now, and I just got back from, where was I? I was in Dallas and Fresno, California, and I came home for like a week and a half, and then I was back in Dallas. I'm back this week. Next week I'm going to Phoenix for 10 days. So yeah, you're just constantly gone, and it gets to be a challenge. So
What's really ironic, David, is I grew up in a construction trades where I had to live out of a suitcase about 6 months out of 12 months.
yeah,
And I was so happy when I got out of the construction trades because I didn't have to live out of a suitcase.
I
Now
know.
I live out of a suitcase. It's just a nicer suitcase and nicer hotels. But people don't always feel sorry for you or understand that it's still living out of a suitcase.
It is, the same thing. People in my office are like, "Oh, you're always gone. You're going to these great places." I'm like, I get it. This is a first world problem. Clearly, I understand what I'm about to say sounds right, but
Mhm.
you're up at 7 in the morning. You're on all day long doing all of the stuff. It's exhausting, and then people want to go out to dinner and go do stuff till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. Then you're right back up the next day, and yeah. But I did something similar when I was in my 20s. I worked for a company in Florida, and I helped remodel retail stores. So I was in a hotel literally for 6 to 9 months of the year, not steady, but it'd be like couple months, couple months, couple months. And by the time that was over, I hated hotels. Like if I went to one more Chili's ever, I'm like, I cannot have one more chili steak for the rest of my life. Like I just want to go home, sit on my couch and have a hot dog. That would be the best night possible for me. Um, so yeah, as good as traveling is, and it's great to go to masterminds, it's fulfilling. It fills, kind of fills your intellectual tank and your networking tank. But man, by the time I get to the end of these trips, these 9-day trips, I'm like, I just want to go home and see my dogs. I just want to go sleep in my own bed, but I get it. Sounds like a first world problem. Cry me a river.
Yeah, right. I agree with you 100%. And
Mhm.
back in the day, the first thing I would do would get home from being on the road all week,
Mhm.
and the wife would want to go out to eat. You're like, I don't want to go out to eat. I've been
I,
eating that
yeah,
all week, right? I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
put a steak on my own grill and have a beer and sit
Dude,
on the deck.
I did this 3-city tour in the fall in Dallas, and it started in Dallas, went to Houston, and ended in San Antonio. And all the speakers go out to eat afterwards, right? And of course, you always go to a nice place, Ruth Chris, Capitol Grill, whatever it is. And by the time I got to San Antonio, I'm like, I cannot have one more steak. I don't give a crap if it's the best steak that's ever existed. I can't. I gotta have chicken or like shrimp. I gotta have something else. I just can't eat one more steak. I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Like I remember that night. I'm like, I don't care where we go. They just better have something besides a steak. Can't do it.
I don't think your listeners really understand how stressful we have it.
I'm going to tell you again. All the comments on this will be out of control. But these two douchebags. But no, I get it. I before I even said it, I know how bad it sounds. But we're lucky, and that's the life that real estate will give you. For the people that are listening, both of us, started at zero or less than zero, right, at some points, and this is what real estate does, right? I explain to people it gave me a life that I clearly don't deserve. I mean, I've been all around the world and spent time on almost all the continents. I've got a great portfolio, but it's because of real estate and getting started. Getting started and getting out there and doing the thing, right? My operations manager Heather says if you do the thing works. Just you don't need to recreate the wheel. There are plenty of people that have blazed this path before you. Find somebody reputable like Derek, and get involved in these masterminds, and the blueprint is there. It's just go do the thing.
Well, the one thing I would add to that, David, is don't quit,
Yeah.
because you will have plenty of opportunities
Mm.
to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But man, just stay humble, stay
Mm.
after it,
Yeah.
and it's a batting average. You're going to have some losses.
Sure.
As long as you get more wins than losses,
Yeah.
stick to it.
Yeah. I tell people, I was to quit. Like I just kept going. I didn't have any alternative, but no, running a business is hard. Nobody, when you get your LLC, that first LLC, right? You get it set up and your EIN, like nobody guaranteed you that it was going to be rainbows and sunshine. Like that's not in any of that paperwork. If you go back and look at it, right? You're
No,
running a business and you're going to mess stuff up. The market's going to change. Your competitors are going to do it just happens. But you're exactly right. Do not quit. Just keep going because real estate's the greatest investment vehicle that's ever been invented. I think it's fantastic. I encourage everybody, including all of our people on our team, the 20 something people, to be buying houses and investing in it.
100%.
Yeah.
And I will also probably add at the end here, even if you are going through some adversity, one of the things that you may figure out down the road is that was the biggest blessing you ever had.
Yeah.
And people pay me a load of money to learn from all the crap I went through in 2007. So
Yeah.
it felt like the end of the world in 2007, but
Yeah.
it actually was the biggest blessing I've ever had in my business career. So
Yeah, I've been through similar with partner breakups and all that, and I don't ever look. I don't even really think about them, but I don't look back and go, "Oh, that guy." Like, oh, I look at the positives. Like, yeah, it may not have gone well, but that guy, pushed me in this direction, or we did this, or I learned that. So there's always a learning, component, and that you can take out of it and find a way to get better. So Derek, what's I know a lot of people have been intrigued by this and your story, and definitely going to want to figure out more about these masterminds and the cruise. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
well, just check out thegenerationsofwealth.com. That'll
Okay.
get you to the show. You can look me up on socials, Derek Dombeck on Facebook, LinkedIn,
Hmm.
TikTok, and I would want to encourage everybody, David, if you have something that you think I can help you with, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm approachable. I'm here to help. Anything I can do, I will do, or help you with a resource.
Hmm.
And that's it. That's why I do these shows, just to grow my network and pass on the knowledge.
Well, fantastic, man, and I love chatting with somebody who's been in the trenches for so long and kind of has some similar battle scars. And so, before I let you go, one last time, what was the link for the book? Because I definitely want people to download that.
Link for the book is thegenerationsofwealth.com/join.
Oh, nice. Okay, very very good. Well, Derek, it was an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you and get to know you a little bit better. Hopefully, maybe I'll get to come on your podcast one day and we can meet up and have a beer someplace. I absolutely really enjoyed our time.
No, 100%. And I will never turn down a beer, David.
All
So
right.
we'll
I
figure that
figured you
out.
were, you were from Wisconsin, so that was a safe bet.
No doubt.
All right, man. Have a great afternoon and safe travels to the next Rio.
Thanks a lot.